everybody. So you'll notice something different about me than the rest of our speakers. I'm a woman. So I'm just saying that I have a little bit of a different way to see all of this clarity that we've been working through today. So it was just the other week, I was at my house, I was at home, and I was doing things that you do at home, like the regular things that you do at home, like laundry and telling my kids to pick up their things off the stairs and bring them up to their room. And I've decided, as the mom of 4 people, basically all you do when you are at home with your family is move things. Think about it for a second. This is kind of profound. You can write that in your notes. All you do is move things. You move laundry in, you move laundry out, you move dishes in, you move dishes out, you move the lawnmower out, you move the lawnmower in, you bring the groceries in, you take the trash out. All you do as a parent, as a person at home, is just move things around. And so here I was moving things in my house, and I was walking down the hallway in my upstairs, and all of a sudden I stopped because there was this incredible rainbow on the floor of my carpet upstairs. It was the right time of day where the sun was coming in right through the window, and it hit just the shower door just right, just to cast this beautiful rainbow on my carpet floor. And so I sat there and I shouted to my kids. I yelled for my youngest daughter, Skylar. I said, come up, see the rainbow that is here on the floor. And so I sat her on the floor and I said, let's take your picture. Isn't she so cute? Let's take your picture in this beautiful, beautiful rainbow. And we laughed and we played in it for a couple of minutes. She said, let me get my stuffed animals. And they had a little party in the rainbow that was there. And after just a few minutes, that was it. The rainbow was gone. The sun had moved away from the window and from the perfect reflection that it had on the shower door, and that was it. And here's the thing about rainbows. They're reflections, right? So you can't actually touch them. You can't grab a hold of them, but they just reflect the sun coming in. And sometimes they're so striking that they just take your breath away in the moment. Now, today, as people of God, as the church, we have strategized and networked. We have planned and schemed and researched. We have figured out some things and learned some things about our communities. And hopefully we've thought about some things about ourselves. And we have thought about how we are going to be relevant in today's church and society. We have inspired ourselves and we have sharpened our axes. Thank you, John Dahl. And today, for our last session here, I want to ask you and let you sit with this very simple question. Why? Why does all of this matter? Why spend your beautiful fall Saturday doing all of this work? Jesus and all. If we read the Bible, God's pretty clear that God's got that all covered. And as Christians, we know the end of the story, don't we? We know that love wins. We know that Jesus wins. So why? Why does all of this matter? Why is this work so important? Why? Because being human is hard. Am I right? Being a person here on this earth in this time, it is hard. Being human is hard, and it's messy, and it's lonely, and it's complicated, and it's tough, and it's overwhelming, and it breaks your heart over and over and over again. It's hard parenting toddlers or parenting teenagers. It's hard finding yourself or finding friends. It's hard watching your beloved's memory decline or your bank account decline. It's hard understanding why they did what they did. And it's hard knowing if you're on the right path or knowing that you are not on the right path, but you're not sure how to get back there. It's hard overcoming addiction. It's hard overcoming anxiety. It's hard grieving the loss of your loved one. It's hard grieving the loss of your church or grieving the loss of your dream. It's hard leading the church. Being human is hard for every single one of us. 2 weeks ago, my dad had a CT scan on his abdomen, and it revealed that he had a tumor that was wrapped up into his small intestines. And in order to remove this tumor, he would have to get surgery at Mayo Clinic. And it would require him to open him all the way up, take out his intestines and the tumor, and put him back together again. But here's the thing, this surgery that my dad was going to go do, It was done in the exact same space, the exact same wing of the hospital where my mom died just 5 years ago from cancer. So it has this space, has this vivid, complicated, even traumatic memories of, and I hadn't even walked back into Mayo Clinic since my mom died, but now I would walk back in with my dad for another surgery, for another tumor, because being human is hard. We've talked about this all day. We've talked about how these past couple of years have been hard in ministry, and it's been hard on the church. And on top of that, it has been hard for us in our lives individually. People have been angry about this thing or the other thing. Families and workspaces divided politically. We've had to canoe the mountains. My goodness, whoever asked to do that? It's been hard for all of us, and being church is hard. In the Bible, there's only one miracle that Jesus did in all 4 of the Gospels. Pastors, which one is that? Anyone? Come on, one miracle that happens in all 4 Gospels is what? Feeding of the 5,000. Yeah, you get a prize. I don't know what it is. But I think that if God decided to do something like put one miracle in all 4 Gospels, that's just like this big flashing sign that says, hey, there's something here. I need you to pay attention to this. This is important. And you guys all know this story. You've been around church before. Jesus has been teaching all day, and he's in this wilderness area. Let's say he's up on a mountainside, should we say, and it becomes supper time. And then the book of John tells it like this. It says, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed while healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat with his disciples. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only to test him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. I love this imagery so much. Can you imagine Jesus sitting there with kind of this little smart aleck look on his face? You know, like he already knows what he's going to do. He's already got a plan for something. He's got this little glint in his eye when he's saying it. But he looks over at his buddy Phil and he says, "Hey, Phil, what are we going to do to get enough dinner for all of these folks that are coming up here to the mountainside?" And then Philip replies, "If it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each to have one bite." As my kids would say, Philip is looking at Jesus and saying, "Jesus, you're crazy. Jesus, what are you even asking me to do?" But then Jesus suggests something mind-blowing. Jesus suggests that the disciples do something about it, that there is work to be done. This is what it says in the other Gospels. Jesus replies, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. You give them something to eat in Mark. You give them something to eat in Luke. You give them something to eat. You feed them, disciples. It's up to you. It's up to you to provide for their hunger. It's up to you to fill their bellies. It's up for you to put yourself out there. It's up for you to give. You give them something to eat." My friends, God is clear about God's vision for the world. God is clear for us about how we get through this hard human life. God is clear about who is to go and fill them up. My friends, it's you. It's you. God is clear about you. In just the past couple of months, 2 really good friends of mine, both breast cancer survivors in the past, both of them found new lumps. And they had to go and get CT scans and PET scans and biopsies. And I was praying for them and thinking about them through all of this. And their anxiety levels, which, as you can imagine, were both just through the roof. Both of these women, they had already suffered chemotherapy. They had both had mastectomies. They had both experienced the sickness that comes from putting poison into your body in order to be able to heal it. And now they both look at a future where they might have to do it again. And as they waited for the results of all the biopsies, all they could do was cry and pray and wait. And when the results came back, one's friend's test was benign, and the other's was cancer. Being human is hard. My daughter, Mackenzie, she recently finished a semester abroad in Spain. And while she was there, she had to take a train from Barcelona to go visit another part of the country. And as she was sitting in the train station waiting for her train, she saw a mother and a daughter looking confused as they looked at the screens, trying to find their way to navigate to their train. And so Mackenzie, she went up to them and she asked them in Spanish if they needed some help and things like that. And they looked at her and they said, "No habla español." And she said, "Well, great. Do you speak English?" And they smiled and said, "Yes, yes." They said, "We're trying to find the right train. We're trying to go to this place." So Mackenzie grabbed them and she said, "I'll show you where to go find it." And she walked them over to where they would find their train. And as Mackenzie sat there and she said, "Hey, so where are you from? And why are you going to where you're going?" Said the mother and the girl, they looked down and they grabbed each other's hands and they looked at my daughter and said, "We just left our home in Ukraine." Being human is hard. Being human is so hard that God developed a strategy for us to get through all of the hard, for us to get through all of the pain, the brokenness, the bruises, the frustration, the hard roads of this life. Because let's be honest, we're all the same. We're all in need of the support of a community, in need of kindness, in need of compassion, in need of rest, in need of the love of a Savior. And friends, if you leave this conference today, I want you to walk out of this conference with clarity. God is clear about God's mission. It's you. You are God's plan. You are God's strategy. You are God's creation. You are God's vision to help the least, the lost, the last, and the lowest, to help the marginalized, to help those people whose lives are hard or who are hurt, who are hung up. We are God's clarity because we are the church. And maybe if you're like me, you sit there and you have a lot of excuses. You think, "Oh, not me, I'm not qualified. I don't even know what I believe most days. My life's a mess and I'm too tired to just keep going and going." Well, my friends, here's the truth of it, is that the Bible never once shies away at people's humanness. In fact, the Bible, if you read it, it actually seems to try and accentuate their humanness, to elevate their story of their complete lack of awesomeness and their total bumbling of the whole entire thing. Quite honestly, if you look at the whole theme of the Bible, it's that people are a mess. God used drunk and naked Noah, unwed teenage mother Mary, old man Abraham, deceitful liar Jacob, stuttering Moses, and fearful Gideon. God used prostitute Rahab and adulterer David and denying Peter and doubting Thomas. God used worrying Martha and even dead Lazarus. My friends, right where you are, right in your own community, God is clear that you are God's plan for helping the least, the lost, the last, and the lowest in this hard human life. And it's through invitation, through leadership, through conversation, through connection, through teaching, through compassion, through your work for justice, through your work for peace, through your love. You are God's strategy. You are God's reflection of love in this world. In the book of John, the author talks about himself in relation to God's strategy. He writes it like this: "He, the author, came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light." We get to reflect the love of Christ. We aren't the light. Never once have we ever been the light. Maybe some of you think you are, You've been hustling in your church and working yourselves absolutely to death to think that you're the only one who could do it, and if you don't do it, then nobody else will do it. But here's the truth. We are not God, so the pressure's off. We don't have to worry, and God reminds us over and over again that we have nothing to prove. We have nothing to fear. We have nothing to earn. We have nothing to gain and nothing to lose. We are just the reflection. We are not the light, but we get to point to the light. God doesn't invite us into God's work so that we can just have bigger churches or more awesome pastors or more dynamic worship leaders or more kids in Sunday school. God invites us in because being human is hard, and we get to point each other to the one that makes that easier. Because on God's team, everyone gets to play, and we desperately need everyone to play. We need you to go out there with the kind of bold unselfishness that we only get from the confidence and promise that God gives to each and every one of us to reach the least, the last, the lost, and the lowest. The confidence to realize that God has got us through all of it. You are not God's plan in some distant future. My friends, you are worthy now. Not in some future state when you get your vision together or your budget together or your church council in order. Not when you work your own stuff out, but right now, because there's a hurting world that needs you to point to Jesus, that needs you to reflect the light. And my friends, this may seem intimidating and overwhelming and too big. And the truth is, when you feel like you're surrounded, God is surrounding you. God has got you. God has got your churches. God has got your families. God has got your communities. God has got all of humanity. Paul tells us this in Romans 8. He says, "What then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things?" So as I sat in that waiting room for 8 hours while my dad was having surgery at Mayo Clinic, replaying over and over in my head how I had walked out of there the last time without my mom, I received message after message on my phone, text after text, phone call after phone call, from my friends, from my church, my community. They just flooded in for me right there at that time. Messages that say, "Angie, I know that this is hard, but I am praying for you. Angie, you're not alone. God has got you." It's not like I didn't know that. I mean, right? I'm a pastor. I know those things, right? I mean, for goodness sake. But it was like when you leave your partner or your kids and you hang up the phone, and before you hang up the phone, what do you tell them? "I love you." Not because they don't know that. They know that. But because we need to hear it. We need to hear it over and over and over again until the hard is over, until it isn't cancer, until the dad goes home. We need to remember it again and again and again. God is for you so you can be for each other, so you can go out and be for them. God is so clear about this. You give them something to eat. You make disciples of all nations. You reflect my love. You reflect my grace. You reflect my hope. You reflect my compassion. You reflect my justice. You are God's clarity. My friends, you are God's plan. How cool is that? You are God's plan for the kid who's sitting alone in his basement this Saturday morning gaming because he's convinced that he's unlovable. He's convinced that he'll never be accepted and that no one will ever want to be his friend. You are God's plan for the dad who can no longer keep up with appearances, who feels like he's falling apart inside, but everyone expects him to just keep it together and provide for all of them. You are God's plan for the woman who's so afraid that she won't ever measure up, that she'll never be a good enough wife or mother or professional, that she just exhausts herself in the process. You are God's plan for the man who's been stuffing his childhood abuse with the numb of alcohol to just try and forget and hide the shame, that pain that walks with him every day of his entire life. You are God's plan for the wife who's watching her beloved husband's memory and body decline, but she's so afraid of what's going to happen to her in the next year. You are God's plan for the mom who wants to connect with her teenager but just plain doesn't know how. You are God's plan for when being human is hard. And Jesus, I imagine Jesus looks at you and looks at me, just like he looked at Philip that day out there on the mountainside when he looked at the crowd that needed help. Jesus looks with this little smirk on his face, this little glimmer in his eye, and he looks at us and he says, "All right, what have you got? Some fish, some bread, a little bit of love, a couple of encouraging words, some pocket change? What, you got some time, a listening ear, some leadership skills, some prayer? Oh, all you've got is your beautiful, messy, vulnerable self? Okay, church, let's get to work. Let's do this, because together, you and I are more